Before we launch into warp speed, let me ask you this. How well do you really know Star Trek? I'm about to reveal 15 weird, mind-blowing facts about this legendary franchise. Facts that even the biggest Trekkies might have missed. Comment below if you already knew any of these secrets. And don't forget to subscribe for more hidden Hollywood gems and movie trivia every single week. Now, let's boldly go where no fan has gone before. Number 1. The Spock that almost wasn't. Can you imagine Star Trek without Leonard Nimoy as Spock? Originally, the studio didn't want him at all. NBC executives thought Spock's pointed ears made him look too satanic for television audiences. They even considered cutting the character completely after the pilot. But Gene Roddenberry, the show's creator, fought to keep Spock, believing he was central to the idea of a logical alien perspective on humanity. And here's the twist. Makeup tests almost gave Spock red skin to make him appear even more alien. Thankfully, that was scrapped, because under the studio lights, the red turned a weird shade of green. Without Roddenberry's persistence, Spock might never have existed, and we'd have lost one of the most iconic characters in science fiction history. Number 2. William Shatner's fear of flying. It might sound ironic, but William Shatner, who played the fearless Captain Kirk, actually had a deep fear of flying. Even though his character commanded the Starship Enterprise, Shatner avoided air travel as much as possible. For years, he drove across the country to appearances instead of boarding a plane. What's even stranger is that later in life, he hosted a documentary about airline disasters called Weird or What? A strange choice for someone with flight anxiety. Despite this fear, Shatner's performance as Kirk embodied confidence and boldness, proving that acting can truly overcome personal fears. Fans often joke that while Kirk could face Klingons without blinking, Shatner himself would rather avoid a short flight. This ironic twist makes his legacy as Captain Kirk even more fascinating and weirdly human. Number 3. The Vulcan Salute's secret origin. The famous Vulcan salute, "Live long and prosper," wasn't just invented on the spot. Leonard Nimoy actually based it on a gesture from his Jewish heritage. As a child, he remembered a synagogue service where the rabbi raised his hand in a similar shape, representing the Hebrew letter Shin, a symbol of the word Sadai, which means Almighty God. Nimoy adapted this spiritual gesture into Spock's alien greeting, giving it both authenticity and cultural depth. What's even cooler is that many cast members couldn't form the salute properly with their fingers, so some scenes had to be staged carefully. Fans everywhere have since adopted it as a universal symbol of peace and unity. Who knew that one of science fiction's most iconic symbols actually came from an ancient tradition? Number 4. Nichelle Nichols almost quit. Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura, once nearly left Star Trek after the first season. She felt her role was limited and wanted to return to Broadway. But then she met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who told her she couldn't leave. King explained that her role as a black woman in a position of authority on television was groundbreaking and an inspiration to millions. Shocked and honored, Nichols decided to stay, making history as one of the first black actresses in a non-stereotypical TV role. Later, she even worked with NASA to recruit female and minority astronauts. Without King's encouragement, we might have lost Uhura far too early, and the world would have missed one of television's most influential cultural milestones. Number 5. The Klingon language was invented later. When Star Trek the original series first aired, the Klingons didn't actually have their own language. They just growled English lines with heavy accents. It wasn't until the movies in the 1980s that linguist Mark Okrand was hired to create a fully functional Klingon language. He gave it its own grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation rules, making it one of the most famous constructed languages in pop culture. Today, there are even dictionaries, translation guides, and fans who can speak fluent Klingon. Imagine going from a few grunts on TV to a worldwide community of speakers. This bizarre evolution proves how deeply Star Trek influenced not just science fiction, but also linguistics and fandom culture. Truly, Klingon went from nonsense to one of the most complex fictional languages ever created. Number 6. The Tribbles were real trouble.
The adorable Tribbles from Star Trek the original series became fan favorites instantly. But behind the scenes, they were a nightmare. The furry props were made from real animal fur and filled with tiny mechanical devices to make them wiggle. Unfortunately, once the cameras started rolling, the set was completely overrun. Crew members struggled to control hundreds of Tribbles as they rolled across the floor, jammed into consoles, and even clogged studio equipment. The chaos made filming the episode The Trouble with Tribbles much harder than expected. Yet, it became one of the most beloved episodes in Star Trek history. The irony is perfect. The Tribbles were supposed to be a nuisance in the story, and they ended up being a nuisance in real life too. Number 7. Captain Kirk never said, "Beam me up, Scotty." One of the weirdest things about Star Trek is that the franchise's most famous quote, "Beam me up, Scotty," was never actually said in the original series. Fans and parodies repeated it so often that it became legend. But in reality, William Shatner as Captain Kirk only used variations like "beam us up" or "Scotty, beam me up." The exact phrase never appeared in dialogue. This odd piece of pop culture history proves how easily audiences can reshape what they remember. The misquote became so powerful that it even inspired merchandise, memes, and references in other shows. So while Kirk never truly said it, "Beam me up, Scotty" remains one of the most recognizable catchphrases in science fiction, even if it never existed on screen. Number 8. Leonard Nimoy invented the Vulcan nerve pinch. The famous Vulcan nerve pinch wasn't written into the script. It was invented by Leonard Nimoy himself. In one episode, Spock was supposed to knock out an enemy using a punch. Nimoy argued that Spock, being a highly logical alien, wouldn't rely on brute force. Instead, he suggested a simple, pressure-based technique that would instantly incapacitate an opponent. Director Mark Daniels loved the idea, and it became Spock's signature move. The best part? Nimoy performed it so convincingly that audiences believed it could really work. Even though it was completely fictional, fans still debate whether a nerve pinch like that is biologically possible. The improvisation turned into one of Star Trek's most unique and unforgettable fighting techniques. It perfectly showed Spock's blend of logic and alien mystery. Number 9. Star Trek was saved by fan letters. In the late 1960s, Star Trek the original series was on the verge of cancellation after its second season. Ratings were dropping and NBC was ready to pull the plug. But something incredible happened. Fans began writing hundreds of thousands of letters to the network, demanding that the show be renewed. This massive outpouring of support became one of the first examples of fan-driven activism in TV history. Their efforts worked, and NBC reluctantly ordered a third season. Although the show still ended after that, the passionate fan base helped launch the syndication success that made Star Trek a cultural phenomenon. Without those letters, the franchise might have died in the 1960s. Instead, it became one of the most endearing and beloved sci-fi universes of all time. Number 10. James Doohan's missing finger. James Doohan, who played the lovable engineer Scotty, had a real-life war injury that many fans never noticed. During World War II, Doohan served in the Canadian military and was shot multiple times on D-Day. He lost the middle finger of his right hand, but thanks to clever camera work, audiences rarely saw it on screen. Directors often positioned his hand carefully or used props to cover it. Doohan never let the injury stop him from performing. In fact, he went on to create the distinct Scottish accent for Scotty that became iconic. His hidden wound is a reminder that behind the make-believe of Star Trek, many actors carried real-life scars. Doohan's bravery both on and off screen made him one of the true heroes of the franchise.
Number 11. The Red Shirt Curse. One of the strangest running jokes in Star Trek is the so-called Red Shirt Curse. In the original series, security officers wearing red uniforms seemed doomed to die on away missions. While Captain Kirk, Spock, and McCoy always survived, the poor red shirts often met quick and bizarre ends. Fans noticed the pattern and turned it into a pop culture meme. What's fascinating is that this wasn't deliberate at first. Writers just used unnamed red shirts as expendable characters to raise the stakes. Over time, it became such a legend that even later Star Trek shows and movies referenced it. Today, red shirt is a term used far beyond Star Trek, describing any disposable character in a story. This weird detail proves how even accidental tropes can become lasting cultural icons. Number 12. DeForest Kelley almost didn't get the part of McCoy. Before Star Trek, Kelley was typecast as villains in Western films, and producers doubted he could play a compassionate doctor. Gene Roddenberry, however, believed in him and pushed for his casting. Kelley's performance brought both warmth and sarcasm, balancing Spock's logic and Kirk's bravado perfectly. Ironically, his role became so iconic that it completely redefined his career. Fans adored his witty one-liners like, "I'm a doctor, not a," which became one of the show's most repeated catchphrases. Without Roddenberry's insistence, we might have missed out on one of the most memorable friendships in science fiction history, the trio of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Number 13. Star Trek inspired real NASA technology. Believe it or not, Star Trek didn't just entertain people, it inspired real scientific progress. NASA engineers admitted that communicators from the show influenced the design of modern flip phones. The sliding doors on the Enterprise inspired automatic doors in supermarkets, and even tablet-style devices in the 1990s were modeled after Starfleet's PADDs. The show's vision of futuristic exploration motivated countless scientists, astronauts, and engineers. In fact, when NASA unveiled the first space shuttle in the 1970s, they named it the Enterprise after a massive fan petition. Star Trek wasn't just science fiction, it was a blueprint for future innovation. Many technologies we take for granted today were first imagined on screen, proving that Star Trek is one of the most influential shows ever made.